Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and today we'll be talking about work. Yes, work is something which is inseparable from our life. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, there is an element of that which is referred to as work. Now, we have heard quite often that let us make our work worship. But how it is possible? Do we need somebody to guide us to make it possible? Will it help if we hear about the experiences of those who have found this kind of guidance in their lives, and then they are not only practicing it, but they are also compassionate, kind, and open enough to share those subtle aspects which have helped them in evolving as human beings. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming a couple today to ITV studio who are blessed by the grace of Satya Sai Baba. So without further ado, let me first welcome Soumya Panchnathan ji to our studio. Namaskar. So Soumya ji, you are a pediatrician. And you also teach medical students as well as people who are practicing pediatry. So that is amazing. And then we also have Sethuraman Panchnathan ji with us. Namaskar. So, Namaskar, you are teaching computer science at Arizona State University.
That's correct.
And then you have also developed something which is very interesting and very effective. What is that? We'll talk a little later. But let's go to the initial stages when you came into the contact of Satya Sai Baba, or you heard about him for the first time. So let me open with you, Soumya ji.
So I came into contact with Swami when I was 12 years old, and my parents were looking for some guidance in our lives. And we first saw Swami when I was 13. And since then, I feel like my life has gone on a different trajectory than it would have had we not ever heard of Swami. He has really guided how we should live in our lives.
It's difficult for people to comprehend what you just said. We'll come back to you. And now to you, Sethu ji.
Yes.
When was it that you first came into contact with Satya Sai Baba?
So it was at a very young age. My maternal grandfather was a devotee of Bhagavan Shri Satya Sai Baba. So through him I got introduced to Swami. And that was my first acquaintance with Swami. But then over the years, as I became a teenager, I had sort of a distance developed between anything to do with religion or any other activities related to spirituality. And then I got a chance to reconnect back in the later part of my teen years through a set of experiences that I had where I actually questioned, what is God? Who is God? And these questions essentially was something that Swami was very gracious enough and kind enough to answer, that then helped me to really understand what the spiritual path is about. And that set the stage for me to continue in that trajectory.
So now you raise a very important question, which is key element for most of us. What is God?
Yes.
We hear certain definitions, or some people associate certain forms when they say God. But I'll come back to you. And this question, when you share your response about what is God with maybe young kids, what would you tell them?
I think, and I do teach young kids. I teach them I've been teaching in the Sai Spiritual Education from the ages of about 12 to 16, and more recently, the kids from 16 to 18. And we describe it as your inner spirit, and how when you talk about God, and God has so many forms, and you choose the form that you enjoy, but that essentially you're always trying to connect to your inner spirit. And that spirit has no limits. And that's how I describe God to the children. And it's amazing, it's easier for children to grasp that than for adults. Adults like to think of God as outside, but children grasp that concept very easily.
But when we say inner spirit, and we also say that God protects us, and if there are troubles, then also people go and pray, may those obstacles be removed, etc. So from that point of view, probably there is a need for us to kind of think that is outside also. What would you say, Sethuji?
No, I think I agree with Soumya's characterization, because I think God is goodness, basically. In fact, that was my very first thing that I started to associate with God, because I did not know anything. I said that to me, God is good and good is God. That was a very, very simple way of looking at it. But having said that as you say, there is a grandiose aspect to it, which is this concept of what we call omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence. I think all of us have that innate abilities, as we are all the spirit, as Soumya said, of that God. And that we also recognize that everybody else has got the spirit. And so this brings, from a practical perspective, it also, while we look at the grandiose and the fantastic aspect of God, and as you say, that you pray to God in order that, that He may alleviate the sufferings of others, or whatever you see in life that you think God can help us with, even in your own work as you started this conversation. At the same time, I think it brings us together. It's a unifying force. Because to me, the constant aspect is the thread of love, that we love ourselves and we also love the people around us. And it doesn't matter where they are, who they are. It is not just that you love only your family or only your children or your parents, but then you expand that love to everybody that you can.
I want to come back to this love aspect, and that level of consciousness where you feel that you love yourself and you are in a position to extend this to one and all. And many of us find that this is kind of eluding. We just hear it, we don't experience it. And so I come back to you, Soumya. When was it that you felt this kind of love is there in me and this wants to go and reach out and touch everybody?
I think I've had glimpses of it many times, but I would say more recently, it is a more constant presence in my life. And in fact, that is the reason I've been able to teach the kids that if you think of God as your inner spirit has so much it wants to do. It has so many ways in which to express itself and express its love. And so I feel like it makes life easy. Actually, people always think of, am I going to do something for someone else, or am I going to do something for myself? But if doing something for someone else is the same as doing something for yourself, expressing your love becomes easy. And so I feel that as that presence has increased in my life, my ability to express that love as just who I am has increased.
So we try to understand if that is not a part of our experience. So then one wonders, is it something sort of partial kind of set up by God's design that some would experience it, some would not, or everybody has equal claim to this experience? What would you say, Sethuji?
I think all of us have got the equal opportunity to experience this. The first thing I think is to open yourself up to the experience. It is not that something has to happen to you. As Soumya was saying earlier, it happens through you. So let me give you an example. And it is not by any means just because we are saying these things that means that all of that has been comprehended and sort of digested. And so what we are saying is there is intellectualization of this, which you're talking about. But then there is this daily practical things that we do to get to that point. So we would say that we are taking those baby steps, right? So one of the things that, as you were starting this conversation about work, is how can we do it through work? How can we do it through our daily living activities at home with our family and friends? So it is a constant reminder of how whatever, as you described work, as anything that you do is work. And it is not just because you get paid it becomes work. that anything that you do is work. And if you treat all of that as something through which you can experience this, then it is open to everybody. It is not necessarily open to only certain people. I don't believe that at all. But then we have to be open to that experiencing. Because once you open yourself up to experiencing it, then the experiences do happen, at least from a personal perspective.
I want to use that cliched expression where they say, I may sound like a broken record, but then again, when you say you should be open, so somebody would say that, why am I not open, even if I try so much, and somebody's like, he's born that he is able to open up. Mm-hmm. So there is something different in me and him. So I don't want you to respond to it, but our mind plays tricks, I must say, and if we want to understand how it is playing, that probably would solve some of our problems. So the tricks of the mind, in the presence of Satya Sai Baba or through his grace, how you felt, Soumyaji, that he has helped you in understanding your mind?
That's a difficult question. I think that it is not so much that he helps you with the tricks that your mind plays, because I think your mind still does those things. I think he helps you stay focused on what's important. And what's important is, no matter what's happening around you, if you give your best to that moment. And many times when I've been agitated or in a struggling situation, I step back and I say, okay, what is the best action I can do at this moment in this situation? And if I add up many of those moments, I find that it has answered that question, because I stay focused on the only thing I can change at all, which is that moment. So I think that is how Swami always says, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future, just focus on that moment. And I think he has also said, excellence, give your best to every moment. And I think those are the principles by which, if you live each moment by those principles, then it becomes additive. And then your mind doesn't have the opportunity. It's not that it doesn't have the ability to play tricks, but it doesn't have the opportunity to play tricks.
So you don't give that opportunity to your mind that it plays tricks, requires you to be focused, is what we understand from Soumyaji. And now with focus, when we try to understand this word worship, because we are saying, let's make our work worship, or as is said, work is worship. We understand a little bit about what work is, and science also gives us a definition whereby they would exactly measure what the work is. But what is worship? So what would be your response?
So I think anything that you do with a sense of giving rather than about receiving becomes worship, in my view. So if you go to work normally, if your focus is all about the pay that you will receive or the promotions that you may receive versus what can you do to effect change, what can you do to help advance the enterprise, what can you do to help others also advance in their aspirations and be a great team player and at the same time be a good leader. And that, I think, would be worship, in my view. Worship is traditionally that you will go to a temple, you will close your eyes and pray. That would be termed as worship. And I think that is worship too. But it doesn't mean that the worship stops right there. It can be in every facet of your life. And the only way I can characterize it is to say that when the giving is more than receiving, then more of the work really becomes worship. When it is all giving and not about receiving at all, it becomes totally worship. And so it is our opportunity, as Soumya was saying, to see if we can exercise that within us to be able to do it. Sometimes with the grace, we'll be able to do it all the time. on a particular day or a particular hour, but sometimes it is an effort. But the only thing that we have within ourselves, when you say that is everybody given an equal opportunity, is effort. So Swami wants us to make our effort. And then the grace can then help lift all the effort. And you find oftentimes, and at least I've found, that sometimes what you receive as the outcome of that work is a lot more grandeur than what you thought it was going to be. That's because the effort is lifted by the grace so much that you can actually feel it. Wow, did I do this? Or even this interview, for example. It might not be what I thought I was going to say. Is what actually is happening right now. It's not necessarily a pre-thought, preordained, or pre-discussed anything. It is happening as we speak. So I find that the more you submit yourself to that and endeavor to want to have that as your objective, is I want my work to be worship, then I think it just happens. And that doesn't mean it happens all the time. It happens sometimes. Sometimes it's a struggle, as I said earlier. Sometimes it's very, very natural.
As what you are saying is, it's all about giving. So giving and not thinking about receiving is worshipping in a way. That's what you said. Would you say 100% yes to what he said? And now let's go towards slightly humorously in being husband and wife. Many times husband would say that because of my wife, I have to think in that fashion.
No, I would agree with that. In fact, I believe that the whole idea of creating your work in a way that is worthy of being an offering is absolutely what we aspire our life to be. And I hope he never has to feel that that he has to think the other way because of me. Because the joy you get in life is directly proportional to how much of it is giving versus how much of it is receiving. Receiving, it happens, and the more you give, as Panch said, you are showered with grace, unbelievable. Money, position, all of those just come. Without...
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be interrupting you, but some of you who are still listening and some of you are finding that what they are saying is really making sense and you are enjoying every bit of their expression, but you feel that this is not happening with me, and some of you must be questioning that she's saying if you give, though you are not looking at gaining it, but you get a lot than what you expected. So some of you, and let me give this thought to Panchji, some people start practicing it and then they realize that it is not actually happening, I'm just doing and others are not responding or I'm not getting back, and then they feel a little disturbed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's where when you're living your daily life, those things can be disappointments, and sometimes you wade through those disappointments. Sometimes the disappointments hold you back. That is a process, I think. It is not like, just because you're doing it, now suddenly the world has changed. And suddenly you see that everything is different. But there is a difference that happens. When you orient yourself that way, it is like, orienting yourself to the compass which is facing north, right? The directions start to happen. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to travel. You still have to travel. There will still be the mountains to climb. There will still be all of those things that happens as you travel. But you feel like you are now directed in the compass, and that you're facing the right direction and moving forward. And I found, this is where I wanted to sort of bring this association back. I think Swami is a tremendous inspiration. See, for some of them, Swami is God. For some of them, Swami is a spiritual teacher. For some of them, Swami is a selfless service, for the humankind, as a person with immense service that he has done for humankind. It doesn't matter how people relate to Swami, but the important thing is that he is a tremendous inspiration because he lived a life which is what we are talking about right now, where he was giving, and forgiving, and not receiving anything at all. So when you see a person walking like that on earth, you get inspired by that person. You see them embarking on these grand projects, and they unfold and they happen in unbelievable amount of time. You see a person who has never taken, or asked for anything from anybody except their love, and you find that things are unfolding and happening. So it becomes a true inspiration for you. And then now, if you're a person who believes that there is grace to be received, and if you invoke the grace, it comes in immense measure. The only way of describing this is, you see it, you experience it in your life. And I know, as you said earlier, some people may feel, but I don't receive it. It is a process. It takes time. You work at it, and you will receive some. Sometimes you receive it, you don't even recognize that you have received. Right?
So I think that's a very valid thing. We don't feel because we don't recognize. Now, recognizing that we are given limited amount of time to be in this body form, so everybody definitely is going to go away, and each beautiful conversation also finds a point where you say bye-bye, but there is some time, and we just want to go towards the practical side of how to make worship. For that, do we need to do something which is definable, or which you may, Soumya ji, say that by practicing this, it becomes more probable that our work becomes worship. So what I'm saying is, you practice certain things which would lead to that kind of state.
So I think focusing on the excellence of the work for its own sake, I think, is one thing that helps. The other thing is, the less you are focused on the results, the more energy you have to put into that work itself. And in fact, the quality of your work, it becomes a cycle. As your work quality improves, you don't have to worry as much about the outcome. As you worry less, the quality improves. And I really feel that excellence and, again, focusing on how it can affect those around you. And I don't have any other practical ideas. That's, I think, but I do want to point out one thing, is it is a process. On a few days, I may have 2 minutes in a day where I'm able to capture that state. Another day I may have 6 minutes. Another day I may spend the entire day in that mode. And I think going along with that is how we can, as we recognize those minutes, as we feel joy at those minutes, then that's how I do it practically.
So practically speaking, as I mentioned, the time is always limited, but there are a few things that needs to be captured, or we should catch them. And from that point of view, I want now Sethuji to share with us, you are from Arizona State University, and you have been instrumental in making an excellent offering for visually impaired people, whereby they can read. Now this has happened through the multidisciplinary approach that is a part of Arizona State University. So share with us, what is it that you have done and how it is helping?
Yes. So again, setting the stage. So I was one time, sitting in front of Swami, and then he was talking about the work as worship. And related to that, he was talking about information to transformation. So he was talking about how information is information. There is transformation of information, but there is no real transformation. So I took this and I said, wow, this is very profound. And if I were to look at computer science and all the things that we are doing in IT, they probably fall under this category of transformation of information from one to the other. And that real transformation is something that would be good to have as a goal. And so as I was thinking about this and praying for some guidance, I came upon the opportunity. Again, this is what happens, is that it opens up this set of opportunities. And so this opportunity came about where a project to put together for assisting individuals with disabilities came about. And so that led to us meeting with individuals who are blind and visually impaired and asking them the questions. What is it that if we do, as computer scientists working with other people, cognitive scientists, psychologists, people in the design school and so on, if we all work together, what is it that we can do that can actually make some meaningful impact in your life? What is it that will help you to be more independent and more productive members of society? And so this conversation that I had with individuals who are blind and visually impaired, as well as their family members, as well as mobility instructors, disability specialists and others who work with individuals who are blind and visually impaired, came upon, can you design technologies for assisting a child, for example, to walk into a library, pick up a book and read as naturally as a sighted child reads? Or when I am an individual who's blind, I come to this interview room that I know exactly who is sitting where. I'm able to sort of greet a person because my computer tells me that so-and-so is in front of you. And this way, I will be able to initiate the conversation rather than waiting for the other person to initiate the conversation. Okay? So these things make my everyday life activities enriched and also will make me more productive, because I will now be able to more gainfully get employed. I also will get the opportunities for higher education. And this is something that is like removing a tremendous amount of impediments, the so-called impediments, to be useful in a sense. So what I felt was that this was a great opportunity for a computer scientist to working with others to see if we can build some devices. So one of the devices that we built was, can we build a reader device that helps reads documents for them? Now, since this project has been there for about 12 to 13 years, there have been readers that have come out of that project, but also it has also motivated other people to take on this problem and work on that. We are still working on the product to recognize people and recognize their emotions, and being able to assist people with information that is not visually accessible, but how do you present that information in other modalities like vibrotactile, as we call it, haptics, touch-based information, and audio-based information to augment what is not available through the visual channel through other channels. So this opened up not only, it's a very interesting thing, it not only is assisting the individuals who are blind and visually impaired, but in turn, it has made the research work go in a direction that it would have never gone. And in fact, the research work is even more enriched than it would have been otherwise. So this is what is the beauty of the whole thing, is you think you're embarking on something where you can be useful, doing something that is useful to humanity through your work. But suddenly the work itself becomes much more enriched than it would have been by just only doing it as an incremental work. This becomes a transformational work. So it is what they would typically ascribe it as, it's a win-win-win-win situation.
I think just whenever I have been in his presence, the kind of person he has inspired me to want to be, I think. And when we talk about Swami's miracles, I think the biggest miracle is how he changes us. What he creates, what he does is minor miracles compared to the miracle of the change he does in us. And I think that's probably the biggest moment, I would say.
So he shifted focus from what happens to me to what happens from me.
Yes.
So what happens from you is key in creating your true experiences. My profound thanks to Sethuraman Panchnathan ji and Soumya Panchnathan ji for joining us. This is Ashok Vyas, thanking all of you with lots of good wishes.